Do you think it's wise to get a financial advisor through Northwestern Mutual? I met this guy at the Black Psychiatrists of America conference, and for residents, one option is $50 per month for financial planning. You know what my answer is going to be.
Run, Forrest! Run!
Yes, sir. Bit me directly in the buttocks.
Listen, let's jump into something that we probably should have talked about several months ago.
Yes, this is old news, but always relevant news.
Doctors, nurses walk out on strike at Ascension St. John in Detroit.
That was in April.
Yeah, this was in April. Wearing their white coats and blue scrubs, some with stethoscopes still draped around their necks. ER docs, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants at Ascension St. John Hospital in Detroit walked off the job, striking against what they say are unfair labor practices that put patients at risk. Right? The union, which is the Greater Detroit Association of Physicians, filed an intent to organize with the National Labor Relations Board in May, and have been working without a contract since they organized. The group of 43 doctors, physician assistants are employed by Team Health, which is contracted to manage. Okay, you guys know what Team Health does, right?
They may not know what Team Health does.
All right, Team Health, basically, they are the ones, what does this article say?
Staffing.
They own the... Team Health basically provides the staffing to the hospital, and then the doctors work for Team Health. You get it? Hospital pays Team Health pays the doctors.
But Team Health is actually owned by a private equity firm called Blackstone. Yes.
So anyway, what the doctors are saying is understaffing and poor working conditions have created an unsafe staffing situation in the emergency department, which has led to excessively long wait times for patients in need of care. Right?
Yep.
And they say some workers carried sign that says no more profits over patients. And Team Health said it worked with Ascension St. John to ensure that emergency. Okay, you guys know where this is going.
So
right?
basically,
so the question is no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, so I read another article. You're reading one article now, but I read another article, which is a really short summary of everything that happened. So what it says is that this strike was only a 24-hour strike. So I don't think that the intention was to strike until they reached an agreement. I think it was to show you need us. All right? You need us. Obviously, there was coverage. I don't know how well the ER was covered.
Is that a waste of time?
I think...
That's like telling your kid, listen, I'm going to turn the TV off if you keep throwing stuff against the wall.
You turn it off for 5 minutes and then turn it back on.
I'm gonna do this if you keep putting your hands, putting paint on your hands and putting on the wall. I'm going to do that, and then you just never do it. Like, I wonder if that's the same thing.
But they did it. They just did it for a very short stint.
Did they reach a deal?
So... based on the article I read, they had not necessarily reached a deal. So herein lies my problem, not with the strike itself.
Okay, what is your problem?
My problem is that the fight, I think that doctors, practitioners have lost so much respect that you can actually have a staffing company, right? You can be telling a staffing company, hey, these conditions are dangerous for patients because we have to see so many patients an hour. The patient wait time is through the roof. All of these things are outdated in terms of equipment. And the staffing company can have the nerve and the authority to go, no, it's not. Like, how? How is that possible? Right? Because the doctors, the other practitioners, we're the ones that are actually working. So what Team Health did was when the doctors...
Look at Dr. Renee doing this investigative journalism. I love it.
When the doctors said,
go ahead,
hey, wait times are exorbitantly long. Patients can wait, 15 hours, right? Or... we have to see, I don't know, let's say we have to see 10 patients in an hour. Team Health came back and was like, that's not true. Because when we averaged it out, if you average anything out.
There you go, cursing again on this podcast.
Anyway, if you average anything out, the numbers always look good, right? But this is not only about numbers, right? So Team Health is so caught up on, no, your numbers are wrong, that they are forgetting about the impact. There's impact behind those numbers, right? So maybe in the last 5 days, the wait wasn't 15 hours, but on those 3 days that the wait was 15 hours, you had a patient whose troponins were going through the roof, but you didn't see them until they went completely through the roof. You see what I'm saying? I'm like, the impact. You can't just approach patient care with numbers. Like that is completely, well, of course you can. You can, but you shouldn't.
Because it's happening right now.
Right. You can do that, but it is extremely irresponsible. And I think that these private equity firms, these, staffing agencies or whatever, I'm like, you got the nerve to go and bring up numbers, right? Because we're trying to speak your language with numbers, but we have context behind our numbers. You don't have any context behind your numbers. Like, that's ridiculous. And to average things out, I'm like, it's just totally irresponsible. Hold on one second. Because on the day that the 15-hour wait actually exists and one person gets hurt, then what Team Health does is they average out everything and go, yeah, but only 15% of people who were diagnosed with a myocardial infarction died. Like, hold on a second. That's still 15% of people. Like,
but this is look. That's
irresponsible.
Business. This is widgetization.
Basically,
right? This is like, it's different, right? Like when you are making a TV and you know that there's certain types of products that can go into the TV, and sometimes there's going to be some of the products that break. You're like, okay,
and blow up in your face.
Break. It's just the TV, right? Or whatever it is that you're making that can be manufactured and put in your house. Like there's a certain cost to make that product, and there's going to be a certain cost that you lose making that product. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about someone's life, to me, I find it very difficult to look at that the same way, but it is.
People
and
do.
I think the biggest issue for docs at this point right now is you got a status quo. What you gonna do about the status quo? Because the I hear everything you're saying, everything you're saying about it being ridiculous, it being whatever bad adjective that you want to apply to that. It doesn't stop the fact that it still is going on right now, and ultimately, I think it's up to doctors. I was shocked that he got doctors, physician assistants, and nurse practitioners, which is actually telling because they all, for the most part, looked at themselves as just employees on the same level, I'm assuming, and just said, we're just going to walk out.
Right.
Which is something that you don't normally see, right? Normally, you'll probably see maybe nurse practitioners or for the physician assistants, they're going to go.
Yeah,
divide. I don't know if you're really going to see the doctors do it. So I was very interested that I saw that. That stood out to me. I was like, So I do think that, the question is how long are docs going to stand on the status quo in order to see some type of change? Because if you just going to complain about this and we're just going to say it's ridiculous and this and that, and what have you, nothing's going to change. Right? Nothing is going to change. Right. And if we feel like this is a bad way of practicing medicine, then you have to do something to take yourself out of that situation. Mm-hmm. And it may not just be individually, it has to be as a group. Got to do something to change the playing field so that it can go back. I don't know if it should go back to the way how it was, but it just has to be a new frontier where, we are, as professionals, providing care where it makes sense for the patients, but also at the same time, it's financially viable for the hospital, right? Because it has to be financially viable also for it to make sense also.
Absolutely.
So that's the way I look at it. It's like, look, what are y'all doing to stop the status quo? And I do think a one-day strike, I don't know if that's really...
Yeah, I don't know that that's really going to be really helpful. But I think also that, our generation, the generations after us, don't actually know how it was before. Mm-hmm. And I think that is part of the problem, right? Like they don't actually know how it was before because they weren't in it, right? That's kind of like, if I tell my niece, about the rotary phone, she's looking at me like, what are you talking about? Like,
I think we did a video on that a long time ago.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what do you mean a rotary phone? Like, how is that, right? What do you mean a Dewey Decimal System? What you actually went and looked at small index cards and tried to find a library? It's like, yes, like that's how you looked for a library book, right? What's an encyclopedia? Right? My son asked me the other day, what's an encyclopedia? When I was his age at 7, I knew what an encyclopedia was. He doesn't know what an encyclopedia was, right? So I think that the advantage that many of these companies, agencies, firms, the advantage that they have is that the generation is ignorant. Well, they're ignorant to what this looked like before. And so it becomes a new way of doing medicine, of practicing medicine, when it's like, nah, actually, this was the old way.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Because I think if you have the old way of doing things is doctors never striked.
No, I'm not talking about
Hold
that.
on, let me finish my point. The old way of doing things is that doctors never striked.
Right.
Now you have a new age of physicians coming out, and they're used to working as employees. Mm-hmm. And what do employees do when they get together and they realize that they're not getting a good deal? They strike. You know,
I get that.
So what I'm saying is you actually might end up getting the opposite effect. You actually might end up getting more change when you have a whole new crop of doctors who don't understand what it's like to be, you know, back in the 50s and 60s and 70s and however long. And doctors don't strike. Doctors just take care of patients and all that stuff. You might start seeing a bunch of doctors say, you know what? Here's my picket line. I'm jumping on the picket line and I'm staying here for 20 days, 30 days.
I get that.
So
but
that's one thing to consider.
I think the one thing that hasn't changed, though, is the physician guilt, right? Which is why when they said that they were striking, I was like, wait, what? And so when I looked at the article, I was like, oh, okay, it's only for 24 hours. I get it, and I understand why.
Yeah, there's gradations to this, right?
Right. This was never going to be like, we're just going to hold out until you give us what we want. This was never going to be that. And I think that the physician guilt is what doesn't change. But I think the structure of practice, or the way in which doctors worked with hospitals, definitely has changed so much and looks so different than what it used to look like, right? Before, it was a lot of private doctors who essentially contracted with hospitals independently, were not at all employed by these hospitals, but just had a collaborative agreement to say, I will generate the patients and I will bring my patients to your hospital and you will credential me there so that I can work with my patients, treat my patients, evaluate my patients at your hospital when necessary, right? So hence, like, you know, when people used to have major medical, right? And they didn't used to have like just regular insurance for primary care. It was just major medical. So things look so different now that I think this new generation doesn't even know that that's the way that it used to look primarily. They see snippets of it with little private practices here and there. But with all the private practices being bought out, now a private practice is not really a private practice anymore.
Yeah.
Most private practices look like they belong to the hospital.
So I think in order to really give, we're going to have to probably talk about this on another episode to finish it out. Because apparently Team Health got the boot recently from that hospital. There's more specifics that we got to go into. So we'll come back to this show, or we'll come back to this topic on a different episode. Yeah. Because I think it's really interesting. If you work at one of those hospitals, you're one of the doctors there, or if you're one of the other nurse practitioners, shout us out. Text us at 833-230-2860. Let us know, what's going on. We'd love to talk, yo. See what you got to say. I was in the doctor's lounge. I was talking to a neurosurgeon. He's working at the hospital as a locum tenens. The hospital has asked him to become an employed doc.
As they always do.
And he verbally said yes. He admitted, he's like, I'm not sure exactly why I said that. I really enjoyed here. and I don't want to do it. Okay, so what would Dr. Renee do in that situation? What if
First of all, I wouldn't have never said yes.
Okay, have you guys ever noticed that Dr. Renee never makes any mistake? She got the answer to everything. Everything is perfect. I would have never done this. I would have never done that. I would have never eaten the forbidden fruit. I would have never done this. I would have never, like, come on, man. Like, everything, you ain't do nothing wrong. You ain't make no mistakes.
I'm flawless.